Welcome to the place of rest, where our aim is to give you language that helps you displace the growing confusion, chaos, and dis-ease of our times. In today's episode, Virginia discusses the deep link between personal sovereignty, systemic wellness, and inner authority as the foundation for freedom and transformation. We hope you enjoy today's conversation.
It is a joy to delve deep into Module 1 and the framework of what we call Module 1. But today I want to talk about our mission clearly, because the what and the how of a thing don't matter if you don't understand the why of a thing. The mission of R.E.S.T fundamentally is for people to live free. But freedom isn't possible without that little word, liberty. Liberty is our capacity to self-govern. Freedom is the consequence of it. And our sovereignty is woven into our DNA. It's woven into our very constitution. This is universal, common to all man. This is self-evident, obvious to all, and this speaks to all of our natural affection. And I say this all the time. That's why the world wants to come to America, because it's a sovereign nation where the government is to protect the rights of people to preserve their sovereignty, protect their sovereignty, to self-govern, to exercise their liberty, to secure their freedom. So we believe that this is a fundamental, basic, and essential foundation to establish before we get deeper into this conversation. People's sovereignty is being sold in the World Wide Web. People think they're using their phones, but they're not. Their phones are using them. I think we're heading into a season where unbelievable freedom can be had in ways we never dreamt of, in spite of how deeply enslaved we are by government, institutions, and social media platforms, to name a few. So in that spirit, I think I want to speak about why freedom is our why. If we lose our capacity to be free, it'll only be because we didn't understand our responsibility to self-govern and leverage liberty, a function of our soul. So this is a big conversation, and perhaps there's many twists in that, but this little story I want to share with you perhaps will create a good framework. Our why is best explained by a gentleman, and I may have referenced him recently, I don't know. But what he had to say is not unusual for me to hear. But I hear it in infinite different ways. But I don't remember anybody coming in my office and just saying exactly what they needed. And it's been a very, very long time since I've seen somebody in his condition. So I think it impacted me deeply. First of all, because I'm getting over a long-term sickness, flu, virus, whatever this beast was. So I wasn't in optimum shape. Secondly, because as he spoke, I was captivated by how fractured and fragmented he was. And thirdly, very, very rare moment for me, but I had no idea what to do next. I was so overwhelmed by my condition and his. And as you can imagine, that's not an option when you're working with people and they're coming in to see you. You got to pull yourself together. And I didn't have many words. So I asked him what he needed. And before I was done speaking, he said freedom. And I found it gripping because we both were on empty with 0 miles left in our tank. And as I glanced to my left at all of our modules, I was captivated by that word that I have circled and boldened, that the mission of rest is to help people experience the freedom of wholeness. Freedom. That's our why. And it seems like such a trite word or overused word, but as we take a glimpse of what's happening around the world, we can see that people give their lives for it. We limit or we confine these words to time. And most people are dead way before they die. They physically die. I think often, to be frank with you, I observe people, I watch people. And I think like never before, I think we're living in a day and age where people have spiritually died. Psychologically, their soul, their mind, their heart, their will, their conscience is so enslaved by a spirit of Babylon, if you will, that's why I find it interesting when we keep talking about slavery and the people that discuss it with so much vigor and passion, as if they're the authority on slavery and what slavery looks like. And all I can think of, you live in a cage of gold. You're enslaved by your own ignorance, by these passions that drive your life, but you have no idea what convictions are essential to save your life. Freedom always requires death. That's why the word repentance, that's so misunderstood, becomes so important. The meaning of that word, depending in its context, but really fundamentally is after you think. Meta, which we get from metamorphosis, right? No, after you think, I suppose arguably you would turn and do something differently when you're in a state of confusion, chaos, and disease, so you can be free. But people become so hyper-focused in winning arguments, they don't stop and think about the words they're using, the thoughts they're navigating, for the ideas they're propagating. And so we are not only enslaved individually when we don't think about reconciling the conflicts we have within ourselves, but we enslave others by imposing our own worldview, our own ideas on them. There is a platform to discuss what's true and what's not, what's lawful, what isn't, what's just, what isn't just. But we don't need to enslave each other with shame, condemnation, and accusations. I was reading a book that was written by the author of The Road Less Traveled, M. Scott Peck, who wrote a very, very well-respected book, The Road Less Traveled, in the 70s, I think. This quote in the back of the book, and I'm just going to say it from the top of my head. I don't know that it's accurate, but true evil is imposing things on another individual without taking responsibility for yourself. Because see, that's how we enslave each other. It is evil to impose a wrong upon another without taking responsibility for yourself. He defines evil as the exercise of power through overt or covert coercion to avoid the personal responsibility required for spiritual growth. And both of those things, personal responsibility, because they keep talking about the collective, both in every field that you can imagine. They tell you that they're trying to protect your sovereignty, but in fact, everything is about the collective. And so the coercion that is upon us comes in such beautiful, eloquent language that like sheep to the slaughter, we're drinking the Kool-Aid. And why is this important? Because we're being enslaved by things that, in the name of freedom and security and protecting your privacy, we're taking away your sovereignty. He argues that when individuals impose their will on others to evade accountability for their own behavior, they engage in what he calls anti-love, which is the opposite of true love. He emphasizes that taking responsibility is essential for personal and spiritual development. I can't think of a sphere of government right now that is eager to take responsibility for the disaster that's been ushered in the last years. I can't think of a branch that is taking responsibility. And love him or hate him, and I don't want to get political on this, but we do have some leaders, love them or hate them, in Congress, in Senate, in local communities, in every sphere of government that are saying no more. We will not be gaslit. We have a disaster on our hands and we refuse to pass this on to our children. Whenever someone tries to shift blame onto another organization, says Peck, and to others, organizations, or external circumstances, they surrender their power and perpetuate harm. Whenever we seek to avoid responsibility for our own behavior, we do so by attempting to give that responsibility to some other individual or organization or entity. But that means we give away our power. So not only we're giving away our sovereignty. So do you see why God hates sin? Because not only are we gaslighting another person, but we're self-destructing in the process. So it's a horrific condition. And by the way, that's what codependent relationships are made of. But there isn't a system, there isn't a program that can tell you what to do to not do this. But there is a whole different way of looking at life and a rhythm of life that can train you to live outside of this. The rhythm of rest is living in a just, non-judgmental, but abiding relationship with others, with ourselves, and with circumstances. There does come a time where we have to let our natural resources do the work. For example, anxiety, depression, fear, anger, judgment, bitterness, that is not natural to us. It's part of our human nature. But that doesn't mean that it's natural, because we know, and Caroline Leaf did extensive work on this, that the brain is hardwired to love. Our predisposition and our hardwiring, not only is it to love, it's to live, to lie, to love, to thrive. So the rhythm of rest is everything that is consistent with what facilitates light, liberty, love, law, and what supports all those things, because our entire body is constructed, if you will, or designed in such a way that it is already the womb. It can be the womb to everything that can facilitate that internal dialogue. That's where real freedom comes in. When you can stop identifying what's happening with you by what somebody else is doing to you. Because we're talking about freedom. That's a universal principle. Freedom. It's common to all men. It's woven into the tapestry of who we are. It's self-evident. And it does speak to all of our natural affection. That means that this isn't something that's up for discussion or debate. That's outside of the reach of the opinions and debate of others. I think there are some things that are sacred, and we're living in a time where nothing is sacred. Everything is on the table for potential exploitation, if you will. Because what began as a great idea when they were dreaming up the World Wide Web is a far cry from what it's become. And the desecration of everything that was sacred by their good intentions of this mass platform of global communication has so been perverted to manipulate the affections of the masses that I think it's something for us to think about. For sure at rest, anyway. because our aim is to invite people to experience the freedom of wholeness through this functional and integrative modalities that restore the sovereignty of the individual. I went all over the place, but let's just make this personal so our listeners can have a takeaway. If you are imposing a wrong upon another person while refusing to accept responsibility for yourself, it aligns with Peck's concept of evil. Not because the act in and of itself, perhaps you're doing it without ill intention, but because it stems from a refusal to grow and to face your own limitations and to act with integrity. And that word integrity is really important to us, because if you don't weave together the reality of your parts, your spirit, your soul, your body, you cannot live with integrity. You've got to bring these things into the rhythm of rest so you can be free. So we want to advance this conversation of freedom in the context of this national R.E.S.T campaign that we will be launching in short order, because that is how we can heal the hemorrhaging heart of this nation in one generation.
We hope listening to this episode has brought you closer to experiencing the freedom of wholeness and healing. If you have questions or comments about today's episode, or for updates about R.E.S.T, please visit our Instagram or Facebook at The Place of R.E.S.T. If you would like more information about Virginia, or to support and join the cause of R.E.S.T, please go to theplaceofrest.com/donate or call 949-289-5935. Thank you for listening to R.E.S.T with Virginia Dixon. We'll see you next week.